We're going to do a little bit of time to reverse engineer today. So I promised you in the morning I would show you a little bit behind the scenes of the design of today and how I think about designing conferences, and maybe it will align with some of the ways you design conferences too. So as I've been reflecting, part of what I love about doing events like this is it causes me to geek out and get really, really deep in ways I haven't thought before, and to have conversations and to learn new things. So this whole time I've been building this for you and with you, I've been learning so much. And just, it's like the fractal, you're just like, whoa, it just expands. And it's just been very cool. And I've learned so much in the past few months. So as I've been reflecting on what I think are the key elements for conferences, conference design specifically, I've come up with these 3 M's that I'm going to share with you today. The first M is the macro, the big picture. This is the narrative storyline, the arc that we talked about. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper on the next slide on that. But this is the intentional sequencing of content. So it's intentional and it's strategic, that tells the story of your event where your participants are the main characters, right? Not the people on stage, but the people in the seats. They're the main characters. They're who we are doing it for. And we can do that using the dramatic arc model. It has a very similar flow to hero's journey, right? So it's that storyline. The second is the micro. The micro are these interstitial moments. They're the little moments between the content. We talked about this with Raven, right? They're the little things that make the big difference. And in my experience, there's 3 things that you want to be thinking about in those interstitial moments between your content segments. The first is community building. We could also call that relationship building, connection. And some examples of how we did that today were the blind portraits. That was one of the first things we did together, right? Meeting a stranger as a friend we haven't met yet, and the affinity groups we did at lunch, right? So helping you make those connections with each other. And you could also just think of that as icebreakers, right? Where are you creating these connection exercises, these intentional structured moments where people are meeting each other and making new friends that hopefully last beyond your event. So community building is 1. 2 is energy management, really important, because if you do not have people's attention, if their energy is waning, you have no impact. It doesn't matter what you created, it doesn't matter the famous keynote speaker, whatever it is, right? If people are not paying attention, you're not making impact. So we have to be proactive, right, about keeping people's energy buoyant. So we did that with Zumba. So we know that afternoon slump is going to be there, especially after a meal. So how do we raise the energy back up? Also, we did the standing ovations between every presenter, right? And not only is that a part of celebrating who they are? Absolutely, right? And giving them this warm environment to step into. It makes you stand up. It makes you yell. It makes you clap. It's circulating your blood, right? So it's just a way for us to infuse energy throughout the program, especially in between speakers where things tend to get a little bit more drowsy. So thinking about that. And the third is learning retention. So this is all about debriefing. We just, in that moment where I asked you to turn to a partner and say, what was valuable for you about that debriefing process, about the visioning process, that's the debrief. So all of these moments in between, usually I would say community building and energy management are priming your audience for your content, so they're on the front end, and then that learning retention is on the back end after that segment of content. Then it's helping people understand what was meaningful, what was valuable, what am I taking away from this, and what am I going to do with it. And then the third M is the medium, which I would call your content formats. And Marshall McLuhan famously said, the medium is the message, right? So when we went into those new format breakouts earlier today, right? The hackathons, the unconferences, the fish bowls, the arts and creativity, all of those are formats that inherently carry experiential learning. They inherently are interactive, engaging. So how do you optimize, right? Sometimes you bring in a speaker, people say this to me all the time, I run a conference, I bring in external speakers, how do I make it interactive and engaging? One is go towards speakers who are interactive and engaging instead of trying to push someone who wants to just do their out-of-the-box talk-at-you talk, right? So you can find people that are more in alignment. And then you can add these interstitial moments. Literally, if you just had the same speakers and the same formats, but you added these interstitial moments, I guarantee you your experience is going to feel exponentially different. So you can change things just by the thread that you weave that ties everything together. And then also, if you go deeper into these content formats and you start innovating, so some examples, right? Earlier, we did the role play, the fashion designer and the party planner and the Right by Racing. We were writing our primary shifts. That's an experience. We were peer brainstorming those traditional formats, and we did that truth or dare in the fireside chat. So just kind of pulling out some of the pieces that we did and the intentions behind each one. All right, are you ready to go deeper down the rabbit hole with me now? Because that's like a high level overview. I could talk about this with you all for hours. I don't want to like take your brain out, but this is the dramatic arc, full dramatic arc. I told you it has like 12 elements. So these are all the elements there. You'll see Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. What was interesting to me when I laid all this out is I realized I really held Act 1 and Act 3, and then most of the presenter content is in Act 2. That wasn't intentional from my conscious brain, but somewhere it was there. So I'm going to go through all these elements with you. Arrival, when you arrived, right? We had our name tags, we had the belonging badges, signing up for the affinity groups, right? That warm welcoming at the reg table. And then welcome and introductions. For those of you who have found parking, I apologize for the parking situation. We had kicked it off with the AI video with the dog, which I will send out for those of you who missed it. We talked about how we got here, how this came to be, and who's in the room, right? So who are you going to meet and connect with today? Guidelines. And so the arrival is important, right? Because, sorry, just to back up, you never have that second chance to make a first impression. So arrival is very, very important. Welcome and introductions, kind of creating this warm environment for people to walk into. Who's in the room and why does it matter? Third up the line is guidelines. We talked about those as the mindsets, right? That are going to help participants get the most out of the experience. Anybody remember any of the guidelines? Shout them out. A stranger's a friend. What else? Full participation. One more. Be uncomfortable or something. Yeah, expand your edge. We did, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. Yes, excellent, wonderful. Yeah, so those are the guidelines, the things that we asked you to try on for today. And then after that, you'll see guidelines integration with the icebreaker. So oftentimes we say guidelines are just like the values of a company are put on the wall, then you never hear about them again. So how do we integrate them? How do we apply them? So right after I introduced the guidelines, we did an exercise where we applied a few of those guidelines. Do you remember what it was? It was the blind portraits. Yeah, so that was our official icebreaker, and then we applied some of the guidelines there. Then we went into context. So in icebreaker and the guidelines integration, icebreaker, you're really creating that sense of connection, community, psychological safety, right? Helping people feel vulnerable, open up, feel connected, and human. Then you go into context and definitions. Why are we here? What are we doing? What is our shared purpose? And what does it mean? So we stepped back. We assume we know what we mean by conference, but we don't necessarily, right? So we defined what does conference mean. We did our primary shifts. Where are we now? Where are we going? And we looked at the 3 event models, the flat line, the chaos, and the dramatic arc, right? So that was all there. That took me about 40 minutes, like most of that content. Usually I'd say in a conference like that, you want that first section to be, anywhere between 40 and an hour. But the more you get the beginning right, the easier everything else is after that. So I always stress the beginning because it's the foundation for everything else. And if something important is missed there, you spend the rest of the day or days cleaning it up after. So that's the beginning. Second act, rungs on the ladder. A lot of content in there. So rungs on the ladder, I'd like to think of it as, this is as you're layering your content sequentially, intentionally, each exercise, each breakout, each speaker is a rung on the ladder, right? So you're climbing the ladder, and each rung is equidistant from the previous rung. If you get to a rung that's too far away, people can't reach it. You're asking too much, or you're asking people to be too vulnerable too quickly. They go from comfort zone, stretch zone, panic zone. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, 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 no, 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 that's too much, too fast. People then clam up, they close down, they're not ready. Or if it's a concept that's too advanced, right? People are like, I'm not ready for that. You haven't laid the foundation for it. So really important as we do our main content that we're layering strategically, and each segment is intentionally layering and leading into the next. So for example, right, when Tucker opened up with right by erasing, that gave us the permission to take things away, let go of our assumptions so that we could reimagine the traditional formats. We could see things in a new way and say, actually, we could let go of what we thought a keynote speaker could be so that we can imagine something else. Does that make sense? Just in terms of the layering. So each thing is like you're turning the next chapter, right? And it's all telling a story that is unfolding over time. Then you get to the pinnacle. The pinnacle is where your primary shift is realized in an experience. And in this case, I thought of the pinnacle as these 2 pieces back to back, what we just experienced. Tucker aiming for the trash can, again, giving us the permission to not get it right the first time, to be creative, to follow our impulses. And then Erica coming in and saying, now that we've let go of trying to get it right and be perfect, what future do you see? What vision do you have that we haven't seen before? How can we as pioneers push the envelope even further? What are you willing? What are you daring to imagine? Then we came into the pinnacle integration, which we talked about our breakthroughs in the vision. So that was the partner share that you just had, right? So processing, it's very important you have a pinnacle experience, usually kind of like a bigger thing, to give people time to specifically integrate and debrief that pinnacle so that they understand what was meaningful and what's going to be different now. Then I like to do a cumulative integration, which is basically if you're at the top of your ladder at your pinnacle, you're looking back down from the beginning arrival and being like, whoa, oh my gosh, look at where we've come now. Look at all this space we've traversed and all the things that we've learned and all the people that we've talked to. So I'm doing that right now in this cumulative review, kind of going back over the day. You could do this in multiple different ways. You could ask people, what have you learned from the beginning of the day, or just imagine. You could even do a visioning. What have you imagined, since you walked in this morning, what has changed? What's become different for you? And then calls to action could be many things. I usually think of calls to action as a way to deepen the learning or a way to deepen the community. So those are two aspects I think are important in calls to action. We're about to do a stop, start, continue right after this. And then you want a final reflection and closing. So you want a way to really seal the container so people walk out feeling like, yes, they're like, the container is closed, I had this experience, it's powerful, I understand what it means, and I'm walking out with clarity. So we're gonna do some shout outs, we're gonna have a closing ceremony, and then we're gonna go out to closing hour, golden hour, excuse me. So that is the dramatic arc of today and how it all came together. Ta-da. So now, yes, Danny.
One quick question.
I'll go back.
For you,
yes.
What was maybe in one or two sentences the from to for us?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew someone was going to ask me that. I was like, they're not going to get away with me not sharing the primary shift. So I had a couple different versions and ideas. I had two primary shifts originally. One was for the kind of maybe newer organizers or less experienced organizers that were feeling like scared and hesitant to push the envelope because they're afraid it won't work. And how do we give them the confidence and the tools and the frameworks that they're like, yeah, I got this. I know that my audiences are going to be grateful for me stepping out of the mold. So that was like for one demographic. And then for the more experienced people that are like, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I think for a lot of us that you tend to we rely on the things that we know and the things that we've always done. And sometimes we get bored or we get stuck or we get isolated. So for those people, I was thinking how do we really create fresh inspiration and new ideas, and for those people that feel like they're already further down the line in terms of pushing the envelope, that we can take those folks even further. So I kind of had two primary shifts going depending on who was in the audience. Great question. Thank you for asking. All right, now back to you. When you walked in the room, you got some postcards. Yes, did everyone get a postcard when you walked in? If you did not, we have volunteers who can give you a postcard. These postcards were lovingly handmade by Suzanne. Where is Suzanne? Where is Suzanne? There's Suzanne. Suzanne's over here. Woohoo, Suzanne. Suzanne is a wonderful experience designer, experiential marketer. She works with GPJ. She works on a lot of the Dreamforce, like a lot of the big events that you would know. Yeah, keep your hand up if you need a postcard. We'll come around and get one to you. And Suzanne and I were talking about this idea. We brainstormed a lot of things together. And we're like, what if we can give people a postcard? And I was like, yeah, we could order some that say think big or dream bold. And she was like, Jenny, that is beneath your brand. We need to make something beautiful. And I was like, okay. And she's like, would it help if I take it on? And I was like, yes, please. So she's like, I will do it. So she got all the she's like, I'm ordering the postcards, I'm doing the things. She laid out the things, she spray painted stuff, and some of it overlaps, so it's kind of intentionally, each one is unique and each one is different. Thank you, Suzanne, for your loving care for this. So you get a unique postcard for everyone. We're gonna send this to you in probably 5 or 6 months. So if you're a nomad, just send it somewhere that you think it will arrive in 6 months. So put your name and address on it. We'll send it to you in about 6 months. So I'm gonna ask you to write some commitments to think about, again, takeaways. What are you taking away from this experience? 3 things: stop, start, continue. So number 1, what will you stop doing? This is the right by erasing, right? What are you going to take away? What have you been overly reliant on, or what elements no longer serve your event you can eliminate, maybe minimize, right? So what do you want to stop doing from clarity that you've had here today? Secondly, what will you start doing? We're going to aim for the trash can. We're going to make new experiments, right? So what bold new experiments will you try? What's at least one new element that you're going to incorporate? Maybe something you experienced here today, maybe an idea someone shared with you. What new thing will you experiment with? And the third one is, what will you continue doing? Maybe you had some insight that something you're already doing is working really, really well, and you want to double down on that. You want to go even further in that direction of this practice maybe you've already been doing. So we're going to give you about 4 minutes to write. There's some music there, so we're going to play for you some music for the next 4 minutes, and you get a chance to write down some ideas for your stop, start, and continue. And write it on your postcard, please, because we're going to send it to you. We're going to remind you later. If you want to, you can take a picture of it afterwards so you have it for yourself, but do write it on your postcard, please. We will be collecting those on your way out of the theater, so you could hand them off, and we will put a postcard stamp on it and mail it to you soon. So you'll get that back in a little bit. As we're kind of rounding out towards the end of the day, I wanted to share a vision with you that I believe is possible. And I would like to welcome you to the golden era of conferences. And it can start right here, and it can start right now, and it is already happening, and we can further that along. So it can be a place where we come together to remember being human again, where we can integrate AI in fun, human, connective ways. It doesn't have to take over our universe, right? We can come back to analog, where we can listen to live music, where we can have deep conversations, where we can do deep learning, where we can meet new people that inspire new ways of thinking and being, where we can create magical peak experiences for people and leave them transformed forever, and begin this ripple through our events, through our gatherings around the world. So many of you are connected to so many other nodes of communities and industries. We have a lot of power in this room to create positive change through conferences, right? Like this, it's one model, it's one opportunity, but it's a huge opportunity to transform the way that we gather and learn together. So I invite you to consider that we are entering the golden era of conferences, and that it begins here, it begins with all of us. And while we have been doing our writing and reviewing, as I said, we did that kind of AI video in the beginning of the day. I wanted to play with ways to bring AI into this experience that was human and connective and fun, and in alignment with the ethos and the values of the things we're talking about. So in a moment, we're just going to be refreshing, and we can refresh the slides now, so you'll see a little real-time refresh happening. While we have been talking, we've been in collaboration with ChatGPT to write a poetic vision statement that we're all going to read together about this golden era of conferences that we're coming into. So ChatGPT knows about what we've been doing today, and it knows some of your what-if statements that have been integrated in. So I'm going to step off stage for a moment, and I will go to the next page, and we're all going to read this poetic vision statement together as one voice. So there is no leader, we're all leaders. And I will just guide us into that. Hopefully you can read it. It is a vision for the golden era of conferences, and it is a poetic collaboration between us and ChatGPT. So I'll invite us to all just take a deep breath in and out first. So in and out. And then deep breath in, and then we will speak together as one voice. This is a love letter to the way we gather. Not to train robots on content, not to watch panels until our eyes glaze over, not to small talk ourselves into hiding behind a name badge. No, we are here for something braver. What if kindness was contagious and wisdom wasn't hoarded but harnessed? What if every interaction became a choice to lead with intention, to risk growth, to discover our highest selves, and maybe, just maybe, to see blank through a brighter lens. We are here to turn the lights back on, to laugh at ourselves mid-session, because even visionary leaders need a sack break. To remember that joy can dance with rigor, that play belongs beside purpose, that courage sometimes looks like a circle of strangers suddenly laughing together. From this room, we carry a promise. The conferences we will create will not just inform, they will transform. They will ripple into our teams, our companies, our communities, as proof that gathering well is not a luxury, It is how we learn, how we lead, how we remember that we are human together. This is not the end. This is the spark. The golden era of conferences begins here, and it begins with us. Woo!